The purification of the emotions. The purification of the emotions is a technique of indigo ray work that has excellent results over a long period of time. Although it is very difficult to see results quickly. One reason for this expected length of working is the very nature of emotions. The root of the word emotion is the Latin emovere, which means to move out, literally, or to agitate or stir up. Emotions are strong feelings, and they can be any feeling or mixture of feelings. They can be complex reactions involving both psychical and physical responses, and include love, hate, fear, angry, and joy. Human folks do not always enjoy excitement, agitation, perturbation, commotion, or disturbance. To the extent that they will not appreciate their own emotions and feelings. This is a lifelong process. While we know what emotions are, they to an extent remain a sacred mystery to us. The concept of being pure uses for a root the Latin word pura, which means, guess what? Pure. It is a straightforward word whose synonyms include simple, mere, absolute, sheer, unmixed, and genuine. Something that is pure is nothing but that particular something. However, there is a dichotomy in how this word is used. One branch of it tends towards meaning virgin, chastity, unsoiled, or unblemished. The other branch tends towards meaning nothing but. The branch we want to follow is the later, simpler, less culture-driven meaning of the word. In the purification of emotions, we are looking to purge or refine the emotions from impurities, from anything but that emotion, positive and negative ones alike. Just as an alchemist wishes to remove that which is not gold in lead, so that it turns into gold. In this regard, a good meaning of pure is applied to color, pure colors being those to which no white is added. So the purification of emotions would be the gradual refining of our emotions until, when we feel a given emotion, we feel the pure emotion, which does not feel confused or agitated, but absolutely peaceful, while at the same time being devastatingly profound in its tone or resonance within the self. I have felt pure emotions from time to time in my life. Those times have sometimes been earned. Sometimes they have been gifts. They have always been my teachers when they occurred. I feel that emotions are a higher truth, an essence that is a kind of harvest within our developing spiritual self, a gift from us to the Creator, as well as from the Creator to us. They are a fruit of our total being. Those of Ra commented in the Law of One sessions about my high degree of purity. They were not talking about my virginity, but about my single-hearted and single-minded nature in terms of the contact with those of Ra. I think this purity had to do with being totally dedicated to seeking the truth, and as living that truth, to doing whatever would help Don seek the truth in his way. Those of QO say, each of you is like a symbol. Much of that which is most truly you lies safely tucked within you, accessible to you only for the most part through creative effort, not necessarily complex or occult effort. For the self reveals itself to the self that has begun a process of purifying of the emotions of facing of the self as it is. Always we are aiming towards the heart of self in doing metaphysical work. Pure emotion is associated with worship. True worshipful living is a high-risk occupation. It is not a loop into the light, but rather a loop into darkness. The illusion creates an emotional, mental, and spiritual twilight in which ideals, the purification of emotions from attachments, and the mindfulness of continuing awareness of the worship bloom in the darkness of blind faith. That is, the true worship is worship of a mystery, awe, wonder, a greater and greater subjective feeling of being held firmly by that which is not illusion, although one cannot understand it, so that the entity rests at last in a completely subjective and subjectively truthful journey. In this regard, worship may be seen as motion, motion of a metaphysical kind rather than a physical kind. It is no wonder that we are fixed here on intuitively aided processes as we work on purifying emotion. This is the universe we most truly live in. In it, there is much of unknowing. You cannot become an entity without polarity. You must be that which your nature is. You are, top to bottom and side to side, entities of 360 degrees. The full circle of personality, from lightest and brightest to the deepest and darkest. The skill lies in seeing your emotions as information-bearing energies, offering to you the fruits of your own past and the seeds of your transformation into an ever emptier, ever lighter, ever hollower self. The earthly part of the self, that soil in which the dark nature hides, is a heavy thing, and it is that soul in which truth and beauty and those mysteries which call you forward grow. Naturally, it is largely in response to other people that we encounter our chances to purify the emotions, since without an object to which to react, there is no reaction. But it is ourselves that we are seeing as we respond. How do we know when we have reached a purer emotion? Those of QO say, each of your emotions has a perfectly crystalline nature. It is buried within the distortions that keep you from seeing and hearing the beauty of that note of feeling, that emotion. So when you experience emotions, know that you are receiving information from a deep source, that is, from that large portion of your consciousness that resides at a level below the threshold of conscious awareness, where words cannot go. Emotions become vocabulary. So as you gaze at yourself reacting emotionally, we ask that you realize that it is not at all your job to remove emotion. Nor is it desirable, in our opinion, that the emotions be altered because you feel they should be altered. Rather, we would suggest, with these emotions that strike you as being less than pure, to sit with that emotion, to re-experience that emotion, to move about in that feeling state, and to gaze without fear and without haste at that experience that you have collected. As you spend the time to contemplate that situation in which the emotion became embedded, perhaps you can begin to see some of where the distortions are within your own vibratory complex. This is valuable information, but not to the conscious mind. Rather, it is the subconscious mind which reaps the benefits of your contemplating those things which have moved you. Contemplate those things that have moved us and the circumstances surrounding them, but never with fear. This is an important point, for fear is the great spoiler of metaphysical work. Our physical bodies gear us to fight or flight when startled, not just by physical things, but also things of the mind and emotion. Moving beyond our own fear takes patience and persistence. Why would we be encouraging a lack of fear when working to purify the emotions? Because it is normal to fear the suffering involved in experiencing confusion and confusing feelings, and sorting them out and dealing with them. And yet it is not skillful to allow this fear to abide for long. Those of Hatan suggest thinking of ourselves as flawed crystals. We are trying to rebuild. There are seated among your peoples more crystallized souls or spirits who are much more oriented towards reflecting and refracting the light and the love of the Creator. These are people of magnetism and illumination to some degree or another, and are committed, each in his or her own way, to the path of righteousness, as this instrument would call it. However, it is the nature of most crystals to be flawed, and the delicate vibrations of the Golden Age are such that each crystal will begin to disintegrate to a certain extent along the flawed line. It is within the free will of each of these entities to rebuild their crystallized entity in such a manner that the flaw no longer exists. However, this is extremely painful. It is much more common for the individual not totally understanding the purification that he or she is going through to blame the pain of transformation upon those nearest the entity. Thus, many who are undergoing personal and individual purifications in order to become purely crystallized and free of flaws on the path to what you would call mastery are interpreting this pain as having to do with a relationship, rather than recognizing that the problem is completely personal and is no reflection upon any partner, child, or situation. This is the great contributing cause to the many seeming synchronous relationship difficulties that you are now observing and indeed experiencing. How hard it is to see the suffering we are doing as distinct from the personalities that seem to have inspired the sorrow. And yet it is so. Other selves are our catalysts. They inspire responses in us without themselves being at all involved, at least not necessarily. In working in consciousness, it is all about ourselves and that refining fire. Truly, one needs to follow the heart, but first one needs to allow each experience to be refined and be purified by that distillery that is carried within that heart by each. It seems that each is a prisoner of time, and yet, in the sense that we are using this analogy, it is only in the freedom of the illusion of time and space that this first purification of self-aware emotion can be accomplished. These raw feelings that the heart senses instantaneously may be already pure, But it is well to ask the self to refrain from impulse and to honor all feeling by moving back to it when one can contemplate it, and in that centered and balanced mode, allow the deeper truths of what has been felt to move through that refining fire which distills pure emotion from the dross of ingredients that are no longer needed. As Mike says, sticking around through this process is hard. I get real depressed at times thinking about all that is coming up. I even find myself wishing for the Mike of the past year. I don't need this pain. One voice would say, run as fast as you can. Another would yell, and it has been a real trial to just stick to my pledge to myself that I would no longer run from my own feelings. Good for you, Mike. As those of QO say, staying with this work is very nurturing in the long run. Only in the darkness of seemingly negative emotions of loss and limitation does the deep prayer, the soulful song of love, take wing and sweep the incarnate being to a point of view where the breath of love, once felt for one entity, may be turned at a world dying and yearning for your deep love and compassion. Thusly, one does well not to turn from sorrow, but to turn towards it, to merge with it, and to carry this loss as a shining ornament which honors the infinite Creator. I love the thought that we are our own spiritual children. In the universal sense, we are all in the manger, no room at the inn, hoping to gain some ground in this incarnation as loving beings. This is not an easy process to love, especially while in the midst of it. We come to new situations and their corresponding emotions as though scattered and surprised. We hope to refine and distill those feelings into their own truths. How can we aid this process? For one thing, we can adopt the disciplines of purification, fasting, meditation, and protection. You did not come here to dispel worry and to be confused. Rather, you came into the arena of third density to strive in darkness. Your greatest sight is the blind but loving heart, for one sees with the heart the light which is not visible to the mind. For within the heart rests the spirit of love. This spirit is a side of wisdom which has no words in your density, and it expresses its wisdom in the more and more purified emotions. When the seeker comes first to the conscious study of the processes of spiritual choice making, at first the heart is less than optimally pure in its expression. The seeker begins day by day and meditation by meditation to empty out of the heart the less pure of that heart's contents, as though the heart were a pocket in which many things have been placed, some of which were not desirable. After a time meditating and seeking, the heart begins to be released from having to hold so much of that which is less than pure, and then the heart may begin to shed its wisdom upon the conscious mind. This purifying process is not short, and we do not wish to suggest that you must become consciously pure in heart. We simply encourage each to do the work of opening in meditation regularly and allowing the heart to empty itself of the petty trivia so that its strain may be deeper and ever more pure. Clear communication is suggested as an aid to purifying the emotions. The emotions that are deeper and which are often the true cause of an outburst of anger are those seeds which have not the full light of the sun, the full light of one's conscious attention and recognition of the kind of seed that has been planted. Who has planted the seed and who has tended the seed as the gardener? Thus, we do not recommend the repressing of any emotional experience, even that of anger, unless the entity with whom one is expressing these energies is, because of being a stranger or being too young to understand, unable to partake in the experience without suffering, on its part, great confusion or misapprehension of a gross nature. Experiencing music, art, reading a play or opera, any form of art can help the self to see and purify the emotions by giving us words and feelings we could not see by ourselves. As spiritual beings, there is far more to the self than can be imagined. And so, as the mind struggles to process information which has no words, that which transcends words becomes increasingly useful. The drama, the comedy, the painting, the opera, the art that pulls an entity beyond words into emotional states. These are valuable things because they trigger truth from the standpoint of emotion or the heart rather than the concept of the mind. And the seeker is attempting to get to the heart of the self, to live from the heart of self. And so these archetypes, which carry great rivers of purified emotions within them, are extremely helpful. Lastly, those of QO suggest that we turn to the Infinite One in silence, in argument, and in prayer. The Creator is seemingly far away. Seemingly, this wondrous mystery has created and then left the universe in which you exist. For all any can prove this is the case. However, when the heart and emotions, from the habit of turning momentarily or for a longer time to the Infinite One, to the mystery of unity, there then opens a very, very primal and deep channel within the roots of mind, and joy, hope, and kindness flower upward to blossom without fanfare or ado in the forefront of the mind, offering that inner home the sweet smell and freshness that the flowers always do. Stopping to remember the Creator is like planting a seed within the self. It flowers and bears fruit in time. What a gift to the self to become able to feel emotions that have become pure and deep and true. It is the accumulation of the work of many years, usually, when the utter resonance and beauty of pure emotion comes to us. We spend so much time in the middle of the waves, scrambling for balance and breath, and rocked with confused combinations of feelings and thoughts. Refining these confused emotions is delicate and subtle work. May we find the joy of these pure rivers of feeling within as we come through the floods of circumstance. This is Robert, and thank you, my sisters and brothers, for joining me in this adventure of seeking and working with the inner self. Praise be our Creator. We thank you, One Infinite Creator, for your love. We thank you, One Infinite Creator, for your light. All is one. Be in peace.